see if more folks come on into the space. So for today, we've got a lot going on. We're going to spend a little bit of the morning. I'm gonna work with us on Black feminism, intersectionality, and cooperatives. And after that, Nikuli is going to work with us on community ownership. And then we're going to do the cooperative gallery walk. And then we're going to look at a land trust model with Kai and reflect on some of that. So we've got kind of a jam-packed North Star day, all facilitated by us Nexus North Star staff. So we're excited to hold you all up in this journey this morning. And we're just happy to have you all here today. The housekeeping bit is that the live transcription or the closed captioning has been enabled. So for those folks that want to use that, please feel free to use it. If you're having any trouble using that or hearing or any tech problems, feel free to reach out to myself, Nikuli, or Kai, and we'll work to resolve or solve for anything that you're coming up against for today. And thanks so much to all of you that filled out the surveys, the evaluation from our past session with Dr. Brewer. And I did want to address one comment I saw in the evaluations from our last session. And there was a comment around like the readings being mandatory. And I just wanted to take a moment just to say that we do share a lot of readings and resources throughout the North Star Black Cooperative Fellowship from the beginning when we share the text, the Collective Courage by Dr. Nemhard, and we've shared things like the Economic Cooperation by W.B. Du Bois. And I just want to share that those resources are really meant for if you feel inspired and want to read or have time and space to read, or if reading is a really great way for you to engage with topics to learn, that we want to provide as much of those resources as we can for all of you. And whether or not you use them right now or in the future, that's up to you. But these things are not necessarily mandatory. We try to design the fellowship in a way that even if folks are unable to do the readings, that will still be able to interact with the information and the knowledge sharing just based upon our time together in these sessions at North Star. Just want to take a little bit of the pressure off from that. Because sometimes if you're like me, you might feel like, oh, I'm not doing everything that they want me to do. And that can make you have feelings about how you're showing up. And we don't need time for we don't need to make time for feeling like you're not showing up well. For this Black feminist journey, I want to ground us in some work from Sister Dr. Alexis Pauline Gumbs, who has done a lot of work over the past decade, several years around Black feminism. And I think this is a really wonderful way for us to get started in this session and thinking about history and memory and things like that as we engage with Black feminists that have set the path for Black cooperative economics. So what do we remember and what do we forget? How do we name and categorize what we can barely observe? For what purpose? With what results? For example, there is only one marine mammal that the dominant scientific community calls by their indigenous name. There are supposedly impossible hybrid dolphins along the route of the triangular transatlantic trail of captive human cargo that defies species. There is a battle for the domain name Amazon, in which a huge corporation has more leverage than the ancient rainforest. a whole region of the planet. What do we need to remember that will push back against the forgetting encouraged by consumer culture and linear time? What can we remember that will surround us in the oceans of history and potential, and how? So this is from Alexis Pounding-Gumb's book called Undrowned, which is a collection of lessons, Black feminist lessons from marine mammals. It's a really excellent way to engage with Black feminism. And I love the creative way in which she has looked at mammals and how they do their things and how those things apply to Black feminism for us. All right, so this morning, as we work on Black feminism, intersectionality, and Black cooperative economics, this is kind of more time and space spent on situating ourselves in our political orientation of Black cooperative economics. So this is building off some of the work that we did with Dr. Brewer in our last session around rethinking capitalism. And so this is more of an idea of how we find ourselves in Black cooperative economics. So cooperatives are not only a specific type of corporate entity or a business strategy, but cooperative economics have always worked to change and solve for social problems. Throughout our Black freedom movement, many of the most significant leaders have used economic cooperation to provide for both the material needs of their communities and use them as a political strategy to build power. So leaders like Harriet Tubman, Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, and we're going to spend some time learning more about the Combahee River Collective this morning. So Black feminist leaders like them built the cooperative movement and also articulated the need for intersectionality, whether they spoke directly to the need for intersectionality or if it was just the way that they showed up in space. This is the work and the path that they forged and the path that we are continuing on in Black cooperative economics. I'm gonna pull up some slides and we're going to spend some time with my favorite. Actually, I don't really have favorites, but she's way up there. Harriet Tubman and the Combahee River and the collective and today. So Harriet Tubman, we've all been really familiar with hearing her name and thinking about her connection with the Underground Railroad, but Harriet Tubman was impressive in many, many, many ways. Obviously an abolitionist, she was actually a general, a spy in the Union Army, a healer, a prophet, a teacher, a sister, dreamer, mother, aunt, friend, wife. Harriet Tubman was born in Maryland's Dorchester County around 1820 and died in Auburn, New York, March 10th, 1913. Could someone take a moment to read this quote?
Known as Moses, Frederick Douglass said, accepting John Brown of sacred memory, I know no one who has willingly encountered more perils and hardships to serve our enslaved people than Harriet Tubman.
Do you all agree?
I do.
Mm-hmm. So there is a dispute about how many trips that Harriet Tubman made to free enslaved people and just how many folks she was able to free. It is believed that she made between 13 to 19 trips to the enslaved territories to free enslaved African people, freeing at least 70 people in those trips. People also have estimated and thrown out numbers as large as 200 folks that she helped bring to freedom. And we'll learn more about the Combie effort that General Tubman led at that point in time. I had a profound moment several years ago when I was reading a children's book about Harriet Tubman to my kids. And in the children's book, the story is really about Harriet Tubman's conversations with God. It's like her prayers. That's kind of how the story goes. And there's a point in the story where Harriet has gotten herself to freedom, and she is doing some work to help welcome, folks that have newly arrived to get into freedom where she's living. And she's praying to God, and she's saying, I don't want to sound ungrateful. I'm so thankful for my freedom. Grateful for my protection on my journey to get free. But I really miss my family, and I really want to see my family again and be with my family. And in the book, it says that God says, well, go get them. And I think about that a lot, just in terms of, I think it's easy to just be like, well, Harriet went and got and freed all these people. But I think in that story, and thinking about that and being brought to that moment where you imagine Harriet making the decision to go back to hell to get the people that she loved. And then you think about, she went back to that hell multiple times. Who knows how many times. And so I just like to meditate a little bit on the courage and bravery and the resolve that she lived out so many times over and over again, that she truly was not free until we were all free. So this is just more inspiration from Alexis Pauline Guillaume's, that freedom is not a secret, it's a practice. And Harriet Tubman, I think, emulates that freedom is a practice and not a secret. So the Combie Ferry Raid, would someone like to join me in reading this paragraph? I can go ahead too.
I can.
Okay, go ahead.
The Combie Ferry Raid. On June 2nd, 1863, Harriet Tubman, under the command of Union Colonel James Montgomery, became the first woman to lead a major military operation in the United States when she and 150 African-American Union soldiers rescued more than 700 slaves in the Combahee Ferry Raid during the Civil War.
Was everyone aware of this effort?
Yes, I was.
You were, Dr. Jolly?
Yes.
I think embarrassingly enough, I saw on like the drunk history, US drunk history.
Well, drunk history is popular for a reason, because I think a lot of people never get told about the fact that not only was she a fierce abolitionist and a captain on the Underground Railroad, but she was also an Army hero. So I'm going to pause here and take a little bit of time to move into how the Combie River Collective and the work of the spy Harriet Tubman went on to inspire Black feminists that still make moves into our current work today. We're going to hear from Dr. Kianga Yamada Taylor, and an interview from a few years ago that she did on Democracy Now! And this is shortly after a book that she wrote about the Combahee River Collective. Let's see here.
As President Trump completes his first year in office, activists in cities across the country will hold mass protests Saturday. On the first anniversary of the historic Women's March, we're speaking with Keeanga-Yamahtta Taylor, Assistant Professor of African American Studies at Princeton University, author of From Black Lives Matter to Black Liberation, and now editor of a new collection of essays titled How We Get Free, Black Feminism and the Combahee River Collective. Now, this is a collective that formed 40 years ago, but certainly has had a significant impact on activism today. And we're going to go back in time and learn a little about what that is. Again, Professor Keeanga-Yamahtta Taylor, our guest in part 2 of this discussion. Combahee River Collective, why was it called that? And who were these women?
So the Combahee Collective named themselves after a raid that was led and conducted by Harriet Tubman in 1853 in South Carolina along the Combahee River that freed several hundred slaves. And that really was, they wanted to named themselves after a political act, which I think is very important to their politics, which is identifying clearly the ways that Black women are oppressed. And I think that that is a important contribution that the Combahee River Collective makes. The discussion about interlocking oppressions, how the way that Black women experience oppression in our society cannot just be factored through the lens of race. It cannot just be factored through the lens of sexism or gender oppression. But we look at how those factors together create even new ways of understanding oppression. And so they talked about interlocking oppressions. They talked about they coined the term identity politics, which has come to mean all sorts of things 40 years after its entry into our political lexicon. But for them, identity politics were quite simple. It was a way of understanding how African American came to understand their oppression in society. It was a way to really locate the source of Black women's politicization and even radicalization, that their experiences with sexism and racism at home, at school, at work, at the doctor's office is really what shaped their political and social experiences in the world. And that became the basis upon which Black women were going to become active in politics. And so they connected these different kinds of political insights and analyses into also a theory of how to confront them, how to combat them. And so one aspect of that was linking this oppression to capitalism, which I think is a critical intervention, but also to connecting it to the oppression of other people. And so they called specifically for coalition politics. And then once strategies had been identified, they recognized that it was important, critical to link women's liberation, Black women's liberation, to a complete reconceptualization of American society, and in fact, a reorganization of American society. And so these are not just interesting historical anecdotes, they're not just interesting historical lessons, but they speak very clearly to the contemporary crisis that we find ourselves in, and not just for Black women, but really for the oppressed and the exploited in this country and internationally. That these are the politics of solidarity, the politics of struggle, and really should be integrated into our discussions about what we do to get free.
Talk about the women involved.
So I interviewed the three authors, the co-authors of the statement: Barbara Smith, her twin sister Beverly Smith, and Demita Frazier. And so they were Black women who had been politically active, who had come of age politically during the early 1960s, had all, I think, graduated high school in 1967, 1968. Barbara Smith talks quite fondly of her going to Chicago in 1968 for the Democratic Party National Convention and participating in the protests there. Demita Frazier talks quite poignantly about her experiences in the Black Panther Party in Chicago and how that was formative in her the development of her politics. Beverly Smith talks about an earlier iteration of political activism in Cleveland involving the Congress of Racial Equality and the struggle around educational justice, and her and Barbara's involvement in organizing freedom schools. And so
didn't Barbara also help to found the Kitchen Table Women of Color Press?
Yeah, absolutely. Which was it came later. It came in the 1980s, but created a critical space for the publication of Black women's writing, and became instrumental.
She did that with Audre Lorde.
Yeah, and became instrumental in the development of not just Black women's studies, but of women's studies as an academic discipline. The role of Kitchen Press in that was quite foundational.
Also, Charlene McRae, the First Lady of New York,
Yes.
Who is married to Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York City, was one of the founding members of the Combahee River Collective.
So I found that out recently, which is fascinating to me. But I think that it points to, in some ways, the development of perhaps a relatively new dynamic in Black women's politics. And so in my first book, From Black Lives Matter to Black Liberation, I talk extensively about the shift in the Black movement from a kind of radical street movement to organized politics, to formal politics, what Bayard Rustin has described as the movement from protest to politics. And, you know, some people look at that transition favorably. And I don't look at it as favorably or unfavorably. I look at it to examine what dynamics are uncovered in that transition from protest to, I wouldn't say to politics, but to formal politics, really to the Democratic Party. And it highlighted the shifts in class dynamics within the Black community that for many decades after the Civil Rights Movement was really understood mainly through the rise of Black men elected officials. But I think in the last 20 to 25 years, we've seen Black women not to the same degree, to a lesser degree, but to a significant and very visible degree, the shift in class dynamics amongst Black women, where you have the emergence of a Black woman elite and a Black woman's political class. Of which I would say McRae is certainly a part of that, even though she is the wife of Bill de Blasio, that she plays a political role in the city of New York. And so it raises the question about class tensions, class dynamics between Black women, and does that change the objectives within whatever we would term as the Black feminist movement today? If at the heart of Black feminist politics has really been a political agenda shaped by the experiences of poor and working class women around reproductive freedom, around campaigns for higher wages, for health care, that really orient on the role of Black women as care providers in households that suffer disproportionately from poverty, then what does that say about the role of women who are in positions to make powerful decisions, who have authority over the lives of Black working class women? I think it complicates the idea that by simply being Black women alone, that we are all on the same side or that we are all on the same team. And the issue of class is something that is very palatable in the Combahee River collective statement. And I think that, again, is the framework of that statement helps us in that regard make sense of even the contemporary issues dealing with class as it pertains to Black women in the Black community.
What is your assessment of the Me Too movement, the Time's Up movement, women speaking for themselves, speaking up?
So Dr. Kianga Yamada Taylor is a force, as you can kind of see, in terms of the way that, just her analysis and what she brings to the space. I want to take a moment at this point in the conversation that Yamada Taylor left off on and just have us read the actual statement that this collective came up with. Who would like to read with me?
I can read with you.
Thank you.
We realize that the liberation of all oppressed peoples necessitates the destruction of the political economic systems of capitalism and imperialism as well as patriarchy. We are socialists because we believe that work must be organized for the collective benefit of those who do the work and create the products, and not for the profit of the bosses. Material resources must be equally distributed amongst those who create these resources. We are not convinced, however, that a socialist revolution that is not also a feminist and anti-racist revolution will guarantee our liberation. We have arrived at the necessity for developing an understanding of class relationships that takes into account the specific class position of Black women who are generally marginal in the labor force. While at this particular time, some of us are temporarily viewed as doubly desirable tokens at white collar and professional levels. We need to articulate the real class situation of persons who are not merely racist, sexless workers, but for whom racial and sexual oppression are significant determinants in their working/economic lives. Although we are in essential agreement with Marx's theory as it applied to the very specific economic relationships he analyzed, we know that this analysis must be extended further in order for us to understand our specific economic situation as Black women.
The statement is actually longer than that, and I can upload the full statement into our shared drive.
I kind of was feeling that too. I felt like it wasn't over yet.
Yeah. It does go on a little bit longer, not too much longer than that. But I feel like this statement helps to provide the context for which Black feminism and its work to be intersectional and bringing up this whole idea of intersectionality and identity politics really sets apart the itself from white feminism. And so oftentimes we hear in movement spaces that people are like, well, you know, what does Black feminism have to do with Black men? And I think that Black feminism has a lot to do with Black men because of the way that it approaches classism and intersectionality and this whole piece around who is the purpose for Black feminism to be around. And so often all of the efforts that the folks that I was listing off before, Harriet Tubman, Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, and now this Combahee River Collective, their analysis and their actions often continue to, they improve the conditions for all working class Black folks, poor Black folks. And they do that by linking it to and understanding how the intersections of our oppression, that our movements and our solutions for the interlocking oppressions need to work to address all of those different things, right? And so I would love to hear what folks think about the class tension that Dr. Keeanga-Yamahtta Taylor brought up towards the end of her discussion when she was talking about McCrae, who is the wife of de Blasio, and talking about what does Black feminism really mean when, and is it enough if just to be a Black woman, is that enough in terms of a Black feminist approach when we have Black women who are part of the elite class or part of the political class? So do people have reactions to Yamahtta Taylor's comments on that?
I'll start. So I've done a lot of research on Black women across history, and the class tension is real. And there's a beautiful thing called linked fate, which I just finished doing the largest national study on Black women trust in the financial services industry. And the way that Black women connect across is really, really powerful. And so I feel like there's differences of opinions, and because in those sacred rooms where a lot of these organizations are created and founded, we're not all there. You know, the translation of what has happened in those rooms sometimes gets lost in translation. But in my personal experience with research of Black women, the intent is pure, but sometimes it's misinterpreted by people who are listening or people who feel excluded or people who want to be included. So I think there's tremendous opportunity here. The last thing I'll say is that there were 5 roadblocks that I found amongst the difference between white feminism. I don't call it Black feminism. There's something called a womanist theology, but it was the relationship with Black men. You know, we are not anti-men. You know, we are for family. And embedded within, from my perspective, but embedded within white feminism is a competition and a competitiveness against men. And so, and it's largely financial and about equity, but Black women in all of our movements throughout time we've seen has all been about the family, the holistic view. So I just think that there's such a powerful piece, and my prayer is that Black women can find ways to move across class lines, because regardless of how much money you make, the broader statistics about Black women reveal that your top line might be different, but your bottom line is really relatively the same, because Black women are trying to address the same issues in one broader community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it kind of goes back to that piece that because of the economic situation of Black folks, that when you have like 1 or 2 people in a Black family that are doing well financially, they're often, and if they're women, they're often sharing most of those resources. But I think absent of like a political analysis or like a analysis around like how capitalism continues to dynamically find ways to oppress workers, we won't make much progress in that area. Other folks have insights, comments around Yamahtta Taylor's, and I would love to see if you have that linked fate. research. If you want to share that with us, I would love to share it with the group too at some point.
Yeah,
Dr.
there's,
Jolly.
yes, the first group that really publicized it was Pew Charitable Trust, but there's an African American out of the University of Michigan. I'll definitely try to find it while we're here.
Okay. Okay.
So I guess I'll try to take on that question when we're talking about how do we make this real for men. And I think it's an important thing that the Combahee River Collective adds, is that when we're talking about this intersectionality, we're also talking about how we affect each other. And there really isn't a world wherein, at least from my perspective, I can hurt you and not feel that, right? But like whiteness as a construct, being fundamentally euphemistic, right, has all these ways to reassure everybody that they're not feeling the pain that they inflict on Black people, right? The same way in patriarchy, they tell us, oh, we get paid more, so that's cool, right? Oh, like you get these extra privileges, that's dope, right? But it warps your relationships. It makes it so that you could be sitting in a room, having a great time, right? Sharing all these really great thoughts you think are super great. And then you find out 3 months later, as your project falls apart, that everybody else in the room could have helped you, but they didn't trust you, right? Because you talked over them or you took too much space and they didn't feel safe pushing back, right? Or they don't know you very well and they're used to their ideas not mattering. So they just assumed you didn't care, right? You have to do this extra work to make those people around you feel comfortable, to actually make yourself trustworthy, right? And demonstrate that over time. And like, it's maddening, but sometimes like your relationships just aren't going to be as real, as genuine, as supportive as they could be, because in your name, under your like banner, people have done some atrocious shit and they're gonna do it tomorrow again, right? So that's why I recoil from this word privilege. I think what we mean to talk about is a material advantage, right? There is demonstrable, like measurable worth. Like in your job, you can tell who the men are by their salaries. And we think that makes it good for us, but that also depresses our salaries long term, because as long as they can pay somebody 75 cents for what you do, the range stays lower, right? Like as long as there's a them or a they that they can hold down and explain it to us all, and we're going to pretend that's okay, right? We all suffer from that. But I like to bring it to that real intimate place. I had a friend one time, I do work in prevention of sexual violence, and I have a lot of anger towards the police. And in 2016, they had to make it illegal in Wisconsin to have sex with somebody in your custody, because apparently that wasn't clear to people, that is not okay, that is not consensual. And we were having a discussion about how that should have been so very obvious with the power dynamics. And she said, well, if the power dynamic, and now she's very much of the same opinion that that's inappropriate, but she's saying if the power dynamics are what make it inappropriate, can men and women have truly consensual relationships in a patriarchal society? And I was like, oh, snap. I want to say yes. I really, really want to say yes to that question, but I can't cite to anywhere responsible about that. And I think we came to the place where I do believe it's possible, but the fact that that is challenged, right? The fact that even in the most close spaces, you have to deal with that. And then once you do become trustworthy and you have to hold somebody through some very uniquely feminine, like problems in this world, like those things weigh on men too, and that's part of why we got to get the fuck up and do something about it. So like, man to man, if ever you're trying to talk to other men, these are some of the things that I have found incredibly helpful and connective about that, and people tend to respond to it well. So like, if you are out there doing it, keep doing it. But the Kambahi Collective's got some tips.
I love that. Can I piggyback off that?
Please do.
Yeah, I most definitely want to speak my piece, just my personal narrative and experience. Growing up the way, I was raised and programmed in society, I can honestly say I was taught some unhelpful ways of how, we treat our women, right? And I can identify with being a womanizer. I have been called out in my history on words like misogyny or lack of inclusion and respect for women, which completely broke my heart because they were all actions that were unintentional, or like I was subconscious, little things as far as like cutting a woman off when she's speaking, right? And it took a courageous woman to call me out on that. And it took me to be vulnerable enough to receive that pushback and be an active listener in that process. So I think that's a huge thing for us as men in these leadership roles in these spaces. Like Brother Damon said, that we have to put that extra work in to build those relationships, to build that trust, and be very intentional with utilizing, I like you didn't use the word privilege and material advantage, being able to like use our Black male material advantage, right? How they say like how us Black people, we tell white people, you need to use your white privilege for the benefit of us. Like us as Black men, we have to use our Black male material advantage for the advancement of our full family. And I also am a believer that it was a strategic design to destroy the Black male, and they use that as a ripple effect to destroy our entire family. When we take it back all the way to the beginnings of time of slavery, to beat, to destroy the king of the household, right? What does that do for the queen? That makes her feel like a sense of no protection, right? A little insecurity may come up with, which causes a lot of fear. It makes us look powerless, which we are not powerless. So that's why I'm very intentional on healing and transformation for all of us. And like we said, it's a holistic view of healing, not just mental health, but mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, all of these things. And everybody deserves healing. And I believe that is a way that we could continue to work through these issues in our society. So thank you for that piece, man.
Okay. As we shift into, I'm gonna have a little space for us to move into some breakouts, but one of the things I wanted to lift up that the Combahee River Collective worked on was there was in Boston in the late 70s, there was a serial killer that was killing Black women. And so part of the work that the founders of the Combahee River Collective were doing was to just make people pay attention that Black women were being killed. And so I think that those are some of the things that in terms of like what doesn't get paid attention to, and it happens in small ways and then also in like larger ways. You can even think about like, Megan Thee Stallion getting shot and how people respond to that and whether or not they felt the need to come to protect her or not, and what that means in our society. And so this effort to constantly be thinking about how we are intersecting with one another, what the value is of a Black woman versus a non-binary person or a Black man, and figuring out our analysis so that we can move in coalition, which is what the Combahee River Collective was really calling us to do, to be able to make the changes that we all deserve so that healing and transformation can really happen. I'm going to move us into small groups, and I would like us to reflect on something that Dr. Kianga Yamada brought up and thinking about, in particular, this question right here. The Combahee River Collective was inspired by the raid on the Combahee Ferry. And what political action can inspire your cooperative? Think about who you're accountable to and how can you tell you are being accountable to them, and just who are your people? I'll put these questions also in the chat, but I'm gonna get folks into some small groups, and then you'll have about 10 minutes to be in your small groups and have this discussion. And let's see, we'll do about 3. And I would love to hear back once we regather after you're done with your small group, what some of your thoughts are about those questions. So be prepared for that.
Do you see the thing to broadcast message to all, or do I have to make you the host?
Oh yeah, I see it.
Okay, cool.
Quincy's out here making moves.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Safe travels.
I did get my booster and everything, and I'm taking all the precautions. I got my
Good.
booster 2 days ago. Yesterday, I was in bed all day. It took me out. It was worse than the vaccine shot for me. I didn't have
Really?
any symptoms for the vaccine shot, but the booster, I felt like I got hit by a bus yesterday. But today
Was
I'm
it the
doing great.
Moderna?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was struggling
And,
yesterday.
Yeah. Well, welcome back, folks. How was that conversation? What did folks talk about? What came up?
A lot of different things came up in our group. I can say some things. I don't know, Megan and Damon, you guys want to tag team this? In case I missed out on some things, but just as far as who we're accountable to, we started thinking about the reason we're doing this work, and so our friends and our family and those people who really bring out that passion in us to be engaged in this work and to really go that distance. And then one of the reasons for, or the political situations, if you will, for our group, it's a housing crisis, and who that impacts mostly is Black and brown folks. And so how do we diminish these programs who pull from you instead of give to you, and add in a program that actually gives to you? You can go to school full time and be in this program. You can have a full-time job and be in this, or how do we give resources rather than create more barriers? And so that was a part of the conversation.
So Quincy, part of what you all were talking about, how in order to benefit, to qualify for certain programs, you can't go to school, or you can't be, okay.
Yeah, in most of our housing programs at YouthLink, it's super tough because the stipulations are a lot and expectations, but then once you get in that program, certain programs, for most of them, you can only go to school for a certain amount of credits. So it limits your ability to finish that in a timely manner. That may benefit you more than a long-term situation. Or you can't work a certain amount of over a certain amount of hours, or you can't be in the program. Just little things like that are more barriers for people than it is benefiting them and helping them move forward in their situation. And I found when I was formerly homeless and now working on the other end, I thought that stuff still exists, and it's even more stipulations now in a lot of these programs.
And I think that kind of dovetails nicely with the other part of it, which is that we talked a lot about removing the shame about wanting to work with family and people that you can be honest with, and people that you like understand at a deeper level, and not trying to systematize everything and not trying to like, so I think our people oftentimes are stigmatized. We think about like nepotism, and we have all these words for why you shouldn't mix business and friendship and all these colloquialisms about that. But rich people do that all the time. That's like most of my world is like, what are the very thin lines they use to separate the different buckets of money so that they pay as little in taxes as they want, they can inherit whatever. Like, we should not feel ashamed for dealing with people we understand and we love, right? And part of that, like with those programs, those stipulations are there because they don't trust those people. They think that they're broken in some way and need to be made better, instead of like, no, they've been viciously destabilized, right, over the course of generations. And I mean, my brother struggled for a decade in my home city, and that was rough to watch, and rough to be a part of, to be honest. And he wasn't broken. He didn't have a house, he just needed a place to be for a minute. And and I watched him try to get jobs and keep jobs, and eventually he was able to, once he had a place to be, right? So I think it was because of our bond, and because like I can't say no to that man, and I don't want to be the guy that says no to that, right? So part of my story was learning to not be ashamed of that, even to my family, right? So while we put this pressure on people to think of themselves first, to not be too generous and to not be too much like they want to be. So I think as we remove that shame, that's an important part of why I came to this program about cooperativism, is because I don't want to do it in the way that is the Western white cooperative way. I want to do it in the way that is, taking care of the people I know, and we'll fill out the paperwork so it'll look shiny, but like, do it different.
Other folks, was anyone inspired by a particular like political action? If not, if you didn't get that far, that's cool too. What else was coming up in your discussions?
I could share Dr. Jolly and I's discussion. It was a pleasure to get to know Dr. Jolly a little more. First off, I just would like to say I appreciate the males in the room that are being vulnerable about this discussion. I feel like often I want to be a listener and learn, because I wouldn't be in this, have this opportunity to learn in this space without two powerful Black women that are leading the North Star. But that our people, like Dr. Jolly was talking about, and I was agreeing that our people and who we're accountable to is really complicated. And I think it's okay to name that. Like Dr. Jolly mentioned losing, has a big family and has lost a lot of family due to cancer. I have chosen family, partly by choice. I don't have blood relatives. I've chosen who my family would be. And so it gets complicated in that, maybe even from a Black male perspective, like in order for us to work through that toxic masculinity, it's okay for us to start new relationships that are healthier, no matter what the gender identity is. And so like, we just talked about the many nuances of Black people, and that collective Blackness is very rich, but yet there is a common drum or a common rhythm. There's something that no matter what, like, there's something we communicate that's spiritual, that it goes beyond words. And so it was a really nice discussion, but we mostly just stayed within that first question. So by all means, I'd be happy to listen from here, or if Dr. Jolly, you have more to add. It was fun to learn about your dissertation as well.
Oh, the only thing I'll say, I definitely enjoyed the conversation too, and the complexity of it in that, you know, I love everybody. I love all of us. So it's not across class, it's not across gender. Like, I love us, and I was raised to love us. And so when you say, who are your people, that's hard. And then when you own where you come from, you know, I recognize I'm educated, I'm privileged, I work in financial services, you know, I work with white folks and Black folks, I raise capital, but I've worked in community as well as I've worked in corporate. So I understand the various different perspectives. So who are my people? It's like people who want to elevate the standard so that it's better for all of us. And so that means that some folks don't see it one way or another way. And the other thing that we talked about is that I feel that the heart and the spirit and the intention is the same. The expression might come out differently. And so that's what's just so difficult, because I'll hear something and I'm like, ooh, they just hit a landmine. This room is about to blow up. But compassionately, I can understand the left side and the right side. But you got to sit there and just let that sit for a second, because I feel we just don't have enough relationship and experiences with each other of getting past the blow up, getting past the landmine. So that's what I feel. And to be held accountable, class is the easiest way for America to make accountability levels. It's real. I mean, when you are a certain class, there's a certain expectation in communities that are not ours. What I found is our community, we've never really abided by class, so we don't truly understand how that dynamic is set up. And so when you don't understand it, my father said, you know, you can't value what you don't understand. And so I pray that we get to a level where we can figure out what works within our community, because there's a lot of confusion around that.
Yeah, and Mr. Jolly, thank you so much. Y'all, everyone is, oh my gosh, I love listening to everyone. My group was with Kate Rose. They had some ideas about the complexity and the modalities, and kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kate Rose, please, and kind of if they're real. I think that goes along the lines of us kind of participating in them, and then when we're participating in them, we're making them real. And that's why I found it really important to include the decolonization process and offer the structure for decolonization to be able to exist. There's a lot of wisdom in the feminine and the masculine, and a lot of the wisdom has been kind of ripped apart and destroyed by a lot of the colonization that goes way back. And it's a lot of structures that have worked for our people, and there are opportunities for exchange in some kind of like universalism for us to find the spiritual structure, which has been sacrificed, and is a very important aspect, especially in a Western society. The economic exchanges, rituals, expressions, they're all relevant to the importance of having emotional regulation. And Dr. Jolly, like, I commend you, because right now I thought about working in corporate. I still don't have the capacity or the patience. And I would build a parallel. It is a goal for it to help as many people as possible, but it's definitely about having Black people that have received the major impact of colonization, because the system right now, as we speak, is crumbling. You know, we're entering. I'm signed up to be a substitute teacher, which I'm picturing coping mechanisms for that, because I'm horrified at the administration, but. Their teachers are walking out, administrators are walking out, HR people are walking out. They're basically hiring just about anyone and everyone with a clean background to take over these classrooms. And we think about all of these children that are kind of being put to the wayside. So family as a concept in feminism is something that is like, people are going to have to embrace their feminine. Everyone needs to embrace their feminine. Like, we don't have a choice. We have to think of ourselves as having the ability, everyone, of some kind of maternal effect. And our responsibilities and involvement is going to have to vary based on the honesty of what we can do. But it's like, we have to start thinking like that, so that we have a structure to grab hold of as this one slowly deteriorates.
Whew, a lot. That's it. This is incredible reflection that you all shared. And I think it's really important that you all brought up really kind of interesting and unique perspectives around what is our collective, and how would our cooperatives then work to create the change that the folks that are in our collectives are saying and showing that they need and want and will do. At this point, we're gonna take a 10-minute break. So if folks could come back by 11:40. Does that sound good? Okay, take care.
Yes.
All right. So, just want to see if folks are back. Could you either give a thumbs up or indicate in the chat if you're here? Cool. Thank you. Cool. Thanks. All right. So we're going to transition now into talking about cooperative and community ownership. But still definitely keeping a lot of what we talked about this morning, within this conversation too, because everything today is just seamlessly flowing together. So I'm gonna share a slide. I'll share a screen. Okay, cool. So today we'll be talking about cooperative and community ownership, and please feel free, if there are any questions or anything, just put them in the chat or just let me know, and we can stop to discuss some stuff between the slides. And then we're gonna move into one of my favorites, I think I can maybe say one of my favorite activities, which is the cooperative gallery walk after this, which will also kind of flow into everything that we've talked about today. So as you're developing your cooperatives I just kind of want to invite you, as we talk through this stuff, to try to see where you feel like your cooperative fits in, where you feel like there's alignment in some of the work that we'll be talking about. This is a lot of slides. I know that we're limited in time, so I'll try to move slowly in speaking, but just keeping up with everything else since we have some more stuff for today. All right, so cooperatives, just so we're on we have a shared definition and understanding of cooperatives. We use this definition from Collective Courage, which I think aligns with a lot of the values here too in this cohort and in this fellowship. But Dr. Jessica Gordon-Emhart talks about cooperatives as companies that are owned by the people who use their services for particular reasons, and those would be the member owners. So to satisfy an economic or social need, to provide an affordable quality good or service, to create an economic structure, to engage in production, or I think this is like one of my favorite parts of this definition, is to facilitate more equal distribution to compensate for market failure, just recognizing that this market was never really built for or by Black and IPOC folks, and therefore we've often been left out of the market. And so cooperatives have been used to kind of figure out like how we build wealth and build wealth for our communities. So cooperatives were often used as a means of survival in Black history, which we'll talk about more later. And really it's embedded in this this value of pooling resources for survival in familial or cultural values. So cooperatives come in many ways, shapes, and forms. So housing cooperatives, which we're going to talk about some more, and then worker co-ops. I'm just going to outline some examples here from Minnesota. So such as the Bike Hub Co-op, and then producer cooperatives to investment co-ops. I want to talk about some more. Then we have credit unions, which you'd have a share of like $5 or $10, and you're a member owner and can run for the board and help make decisions about like how you want your co-op or your bank to look like. And then more informal, but also really important, we also have lending circles, which people come together, pull money, and then each month a part of money would go to one person in the group. I know here in the Liberian community that calls susus. In South Africa, we call them stokvels. There are many names for them. And then last but not least, we also have consumer co-ops, which are like your Sewards or your REIs, where you pay a share and then you participate in that. Yeah, you can also mix them. That's a good point, Damon. Yes, you can also mix them too. All right, and so cooperative structure, what does it look like really? This is also from Dr. Jessica Gordon-Nemhardt's book. It's in the beginning. When we're thinking about cooperatives versus corporations or nonprofits, just so we get a clear picture. So cooperatives are owned by the member owners versus corporations that are owned by the shareholders, and no one really owns a nonprofit. For cooperatives, it's to meet member needs, to satisfy an economic good, to make up for market failure. Versus corporations, the purpose is to profit for the investors, and nonprofits to provide information and services. In terms of who profits for cooperatives, we're going to talk about patronage later too, but profits are the people that are in the cooperative. So for example, let's say you have REI, or I don't know, you're part of Seward, you may see that you may get like some discounts per quarter or whatever, so that counts as kind of the profit sharing that happens within a cooperative, versus corporations where the shareholders profit in proportion of the investment, and then nonprofit, no one is supposed to profit, it stays in the organization. But you may see that there may be some corporations that offer memberships like Sam's Club or Costco, but obviously in cooperatives the governance is run by the member owners, versus Costco, the members don't really run the governance structure. Or nonprofits may also offer memberships like the YMCA or NPR, but even as I am a YMCA member, I don't really get to make decisions about how the organizations run. So those may be some similarities, but also big differences. So all cooperatives have these cooperative principles and values. So open membership, meaning open to all persons. We have had some questions in the past from cooperative members asking, well, what if I want my cooperative to be like a black space, a solely black space, which is why I'm building it. So you'd build that into like your bylaws and governance to communicate that. Also we have democratic and member control, meaning members set the policies and engage in collective decision making. Members' economic participation, so equitable member contribution. And then autonomy and independence, so self and collective help for the organization that is controlled by the members. Education, training, and information, which provide training and education, and this is always ongoing. One of the things that Dr. Jessica Gordon-Nemhardt told the first fellowship, which I wasn't part of, but Danielle was leading it at the time, is that membership education is incredibly important for the cooperative, so that your members always know what is happening, they're always informed about the governance, the bylaws, the decisions, etc. So that's an important principle. Cooperation among cooperatives, meaning co-ops serve members effectively and really engage in strengthening local and regional infrastructure. And lastly, concern for community. So really centering what community needs, figuring out like how your cooperative is really there to serve the community in the larger ways and the larger values. So all of these cooperative principles were introduced by the Rush. Well, they're introduced by ICA, which is the I forgot the thing, but Cooperative Alliance. And then we also have these values at the bottom. So self-help, self-responsibility, democracy, equality, equity, and solidarity. And the Rochdale pioneers who are given credits for establishing co-ops back in the UK, but knowing that cooperatives existed long before the Rochdale pioneers, also recognized that honesty, openness, social responsibility, and caring for others are among some of those cooperative principles and values too. And so as you establish a cooperative, this is a guideline for you to use to figure out like how you want to hold your cooperative structure. Yeah. So housing, yes, Damon and Megan.
I love where that was going, and all of it was accurate. I just want to say that when we get to the phase of like entity formation, that's totally what I study. And if any of that was confusing to you, I got some resources about it as well, because that is super operational. But if there's some nuanced things available, if you feel like you fit almost in one of those boxes, you can still make it work.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for offering that.
Come to me, David. Oh, can you please go back real quick? Quick.
Oh, Lauren, these are also in the Google Drive. There's a copy of the slides too, if you want.
Okay, I was about to screenshot of that. I was like, oh god.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And yeah, Damon, I know we're going to talk about EBREC, or the East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative. And so if you also want to offer some thoughts and wisdom about the work that you did too with SALC, please feel free to do that, which is the Sustainable Economies Law Center. All right, cool. So housing cooperatives. Housing cooperatives are formed and people join on a democratic basis to own or control the housing and community where they live. So this would be based on co-op member shares, which could be your rent, or and then co-op ownership entitles members to occupy a unit that, since they're a cooperative member. And then as all cooperatives, one member, one vote. This may be different with like market rate co-ops, which it depends, the number of votes may depend on the share. But I want to talk about that later too. But cooperatives, so it's always one member, one vote. And then housing cooperatives can really offer alternative ways and more equitable ways and more affordable ways to really engage in living. I also want to recognize that housing cooperatives are not always formal. They may be informal. You may have like a house with like 5 of your friends and you all decide to collectively live together. So just want to be recognize that there might be some informal structures too that are also really important. And then so the two that we have here in Minnesota, and specifically the Twin Cities, is Wilder Square Cooperative, which is a black and brown owned, black and black led cooperative, and in St. Paul. Also throughout these slide decks, I might invite Danielle to like offer up some wisdom about some of the stuff, because she's engaged with some of this work a little more than I have. So if you have anything to offer for Wilder, Danielle, I invite you to do so.
Yeah, Wilder Square Cooperative has, I think, about 143 different units. They're spread out on a really beautiful campus in the Frogtown neighborhood of St. Paul. It was established in the late 70s. It's one of those housing cooperatives that's so large that it requires like a property management company to engage with the owners and to be able to collect shares and things like that. And so currently right now, the position that Wilder Square Cooperative is in is that it is still cooperatively owned. but the board has been intentionally disengaged by property management companies over the last several years. And the past property management company was working with a housing developer to help initiate a sale of the cooperative to a housing developer, and was really working with board members to try and basically underhandedly and dishonestly and unethically make that sale. And so some organizers, a resident board member, understood what was happening and reached out to a local neighborhood organization, the Frogtown Neighborhood Association, and organized to be able to help educate more of the co-op members so that they were able to stop that sale from happening. Unfortunately, the current property management company has also basically said that they want to buy the co-op from the co-op owners. And so Nexus Community Partners and Frogtown Neighborhood Association is working with the board chair and others to continue to organize to make sure that more of the shareholders there are aware of their power as cooperative members, and to work to make sure that they are engaged as powerfully as possibly in the board, and to be able to maintain ownership and also sustain affordable housing at Wilder Square Co-op. Lauren, I see your hand.
I'm just confused. Like, a property management group is there to do facilities management. Well, what would they have to do with trying to buy a building from the people that own the building? I thought their job was to maintain the building.
Right.
How do they, what? I am like, what?
Yeah, so the property management company basically, would slow down work order responses, over the years allowed facilities to come into disrepair, and got the co-op to a situation where it seemed that it would be unaffordable, impossible for the cooperative owners to be able to, without increasing the shareholding costs or the rent, be able to make those repairs. And so the idea is that if they were to buy the co-op, they could then make those improvements, maybe tear things down, potentially use the purchase of that company to be really affordable. It's a really incredible campus. It's beautiful. It's on a major bus line. It's really close to the Green Line. It butts up to the Frogtown neighborhood, Frogtown Farms. It's an ideal space. And so the motivation for the property management company was to be profitable, to make money.
Like, we need to own our own property management companies. Are they Black owned or?
No, it is a huge gap.
So there's one cooperative property management group that currently runs Nokomis, which we're going to talk about, which is an LEC cooperative, or limited equity co-op, but they're not Black owned. They're not Black. It's a white property management group. So we've definitely been having discussions. Like, when we started working with Wilder, I think Danielle even mentions, like, aren't there any like Black property management groups? So we've been talking about this, and now that we know that there's one, we can make more efforts to figure out like how to organize for more. Yeah, it's
Property management companies, it's very difficult to be profitable with a property management company if you don't have volume.
mm-hmm.
And so that's why most of the property management companies that are successful are very large. And so that's the issue. I think there's a way to be able to look at it a little differently if we did like a worker co-op of different people who have different abilities, like plumbing and electricity. So really kind of pulling it together, we kind of have to disaggregate what is really needed to look at it. But just look at it traditionally, it's a very difficult business model to keep sustainable.
Yeah. In that white property cooperative group, I know they manage like a lot of not just the Nokomis, but also like for-profit rental companies too. And so I think that's how they're able to gain a lot of their capital. But that's a really great point. Yeah, thanks, Dr. Jolly, for that.
Yeah, I wanted to make one other point, is just that this example I shared, and I'm sorry I already took up too much of your time, Nikuli, but the example about Wilder Square is a great illustration of Dr. Nemhard's caution and encouragement to have a very educated membership. So they wouldn't have been in this situation had they been engaged as more powerful cooperative owners.
Yeah.
Can I add on that?
Mm-hmm.
There's an incentive in cooperatives and in a lot of places to withhold information, because that information gap creates a power disparity, right? So like the guy who does the numbers walks in the room and says the sky is falling. Nobody else knows how to do numbers, so they just have to assume that the sky is falling, right? So even in well-meaning organizations, over time, there's this, people start to be rewarded for not taking the time to enculturate other people because they gather more clout as they're the only person that knows how to do stuff. So you have to really root the culture of the organization in, like, you won't get anything done if it relies on only one person's knowledge all the time. So that's how you watch out for it in your organization over time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think another thing about Wilder that is also unique and very special is that they also offer Section 8 housing. And so they've always been by these other nonprofit housing entities as a place that they could like pounce on. I don't have the words for it, but pounce on because of that. And so they're always at a vulnerable position just because of the way they've run and operated the housing. For instance, like I think one nonprofit group has still like lists them as an entity of theirs, or like has the number is related to Wilder when Wilder is not even associated with them in any way, shape, or form. Like they are their own cooperative structure and not part of this larger nonprofit housing structure. And so they've faced a lot of they've points of exploitation throughout their cooperative journey. And then the other one that we have here is Sky Without Limits Cooperative, and I attached a journal, a journal or an article in the Google Doc that you can read more of. But the way they got their housing is that they had a slumlord, terrible slumlord, who wasn't doing any repairs, and the buildings were really just in despair. And so the housing tenants organized for, first of all, to get rid of him, and then to be able to purchase the housing cooperative. It's a really great story. They were also featured in a New York Times journal, I believe, or magazine, New York Times article. And so they got rid of the slumlord, and now they're continuing to organize the housing cooperative. And this is both a Black and Brown owned co-op. And also really did a really amazing organizing work for the first right of refusal with the city of Minneapolis, meaning that if the building was going to be sold by a landlord, that now tenants have tenants can organize to try to buy the building if that's what they want to do. So they do some really great work, and they've continued to do that work in North and South Minneapolis too, with additional properties, just recognizing that slumlords are terrible and that we need to have ownership over our living structures and housing structures. And then another one is land co-ops, since we are talking about cooperative housing, land investment co-ops, land trusts, etc. So land co-ops it's a holistic framework to figure out like how we steward the land that really emphasizes on human relationships between residents, investment, and property. And so as we also talk about land cooperatives, especially in Minnesota and the U.S., we also need to talk about like what land stewardship looks like in relationship with our Native brothers and sisters too. And so this cooperative, Root Springs Co-op, which Signy, so this was organized by couples that have now purchased this land in Annandale, Minnesota. It's Root Springs is a land-based cooperative that stewards space for healing and development of Black, Indigenous, and people of color, artists, activists, healers, community centering LGBT folks. So this is a really great I love this co-op. I mean, I love a lot of co-ops. I love all co-ops. But this co-op, we've been in conversation with them to figure out like different funding structures, which has been really interesting and like really amazing to sit in on those conversations. And part of those conversations, something that came up was that, well, you know, we live in Minnesota. A lot of white people tend to have like cabins or land outside of the Twin Cities that they can go and retreat to. And during the uprising here last year, when, you know, everything was so heavy and the body was so heavy too, white people were maybe offering their cabins as a space to retreat to for BIPOC folks here. But at the end of the day, there wasn't like an ownership structure tied to that. And so now, recognizing that we need land, we need water, we need to be out of the city to sometimes heal, this offers a space for people to do that. And Danielle was just there. She also said they have a great body worker. And I remember Louis talking about like a space outside Minnesota too. I remember you talking about that at one point, and I remember thinking, oh my God, Root Springs. So hopefully we can bring Signy back, or maybe a member of Root Springs, to talk more about their work in the future. Okay, so I'm not gonna play the video because we're running time, but it's available, and I can add links to when I send the email. And then next we have community and commercial land trusts. So a land trust is where the entity itself is holding a trust in perpetuity. So it could be like it's not like a 99-year lease, essentially trying to make whatever structure is on the land more affordable for folks. So CLTs will remove land from the speculative market and the real estate market and hold it in a trust. And so that makes the housing more affordable. We have about 5 community land trusts and 1 commercial land trust, which I'm also going to invite Danielle to talk about that one because she's on the board, which is the property, was it partner? I just had the name and now I've lost it, but go ahead.
It's the Partnership in Property Commercial Land Trust. And so you can see on this slide that it's kind of described how it works. And so it's similar to housing and residential land trust in that the commercial land trust comes into ownership of the land, and business owners can come into ownership of the commercial property as improvements are made, or if there is equity put into the equity that is gained in that building. There is a formula that if the business owner decides to sell their commercial property, they'll be able to take some equity out, but some of the equity will also remain with the building so that we can maintain that sustainable, affordable commercial property price, so that another business owner can have an opportunity to come in and come in an affordable way and be able to come into ownership of the building. The Partnership in Property Commercial Land Trust also has another way of entering into ownership or leaseship of those buildings, because we recognize that for many folks in our communities that coming into ownership of the commercial building is still unaffordable, even though we've been working to get those prices down. So we will work with business owners to come into a lease agreement, and then potentially, if they wish to, come into a ownership agreement for those commercial spaces as well. We are just moving into ownership of a couple of our first properties this year, a couple on the north side, some on the south side. I'd be happy to talk with anyone offline about how that works here.
Yeah, and then the first land trust was distributed to a land trust out in Albany, Georgia, that Kai is going to talk more about, but basically the first land trust is black owned. It is continuing to exist today. It was established in 1969. So they do some really great and powerful work, especially when the intentionality around it is still really based around cooperatives and collective land stewardship and land ownership. And then another example is an investment cooperative that allows residents to basically invest financially to either collectively buy, rehab, or manage commercial and residential property. So there are two that I know of here, but one that is run by Black and IPOC folks, and they were actually in North Star last year, but had already been doing this work before North Star, is the Northside Investment Cooperative Enterprise, which was also working in partnership with the City of Lakes Community Land Trust, but working a community-owned investment cooperative in North Minneapolis that is currently purchasing properties and creating and maintaining affordable housing. In addition to that, I think they're also doing commercial space too. But then another one that we love, and we actually had the honor of having Noni Sessions as our graduation speaker last year, is the East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative, which is a model that we definitely love and would love to model here too. So basically, East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative is democratically run and led by people of color, and they're working to create permanently affordable and community-controlled homes. And the way they do it is basically they invite like maybe 10 people to invest $1,000, and then an additional amount of people to also invest $1,000, and then buy an apartment building that may be in danger of being sold and creating more homelessness within the Bay Area. And so then the tenants of that building get to stay in that building, and basically eBrec trains them on offers education and training on cooperative ownership. And then after 10 years, the people that were investors can then also get some profit sharing in that investment that they began with. And so this is just another really great example. At some point, I know we might share like a webinar from them, which was really great, but there's a video too that talks more about their work. I don't think because I'm running out of time, I don't really think I gave them all the flowers that they deserve, but they're doing really, really amazing work. And then there are also different types of cooperatives. So when you think about your cooperatives and how to structure them, there's so many examples, like limited equity cooperatives, where really so you have a share in the cooperative. Sorry, I can't actually see anything now. Oopsie. But essentially, you have a limited equity share in the cooperative, and residents purchase a share in development rather than an individual unit. And then these ones are supposed to be more income-based. For example, this had an annual income cap of like $18,000 to $35,000, and then each unit is responsible for whoever inhibits it, and then when you sell, then you are responsible for sharing that unit or showing that unit. But so in the research I found for my thesis last year was that the Nocoma had a down payment of about $3,000, and I'm not sure if this is accurate, but it still ranges between $5,000 to $12,000, which is comparable to current housing prices, which might be $115,000 plus. And so this is just another way for you to structure your housing cooperative, especially if you want to think about affordability and equity. And then this one, I'm also going to invite Danielle to talk about this one because she lived in this co-op, but group equity cooperatives. So basically, in a group equity co-op, members either pay a deposit or rents for your share. And then in these cases, the prices of the share is roughly the same as the deposit in similar spaces. And when one member moves out of the cooperative, they typically don't profit from the co-op, but they get the deposit and share, like minus any charges that they put down. This means that the cost to get into a group equity co-op is generally much lower than the cost of other types of co-ops. So the one example that we have here is Park Cooperative Apartments, which has 13 units and was established in 1997 when there was a strike and some organizing work that was done. And Danielle lived here, and she always has a great story for Park Co-op.
Yeah, so I had friends that lived in Park Co-op Apartments when I had my first child, and I was a single mom and was looking for housing. And so they said, hey, there's an opening, come apply. And I was able to get in. And we lived into a 2-bedroom apartment. There was a wonderfully upkept backyard that was fenced in with a playground, free laundry in the basement. But I want to just pay a little bit of attention to that last bullet about the buy-in fee or private equity. And that really, I think, kind of like the buy-in and the equity fee is your time and energy to keep the Park Co-op apartment managed well. And so we had spring and fall work days. We all were required to attend a monthly board meeting. We were board members. We all had responsibilities to be on a committee. We we shared responsibility for cleaning the laundry room and making sure that all those things were upkept. But I also recall that that apartment was the cleanest apartment that I had ever moved into. It was like sparkling when I moved in. There was just a real level of like dignity and respect for the space, and it was a really incredible space for me and my son to be in that we could afford, and maybe do a little bit of extra things based on like my one income, so we could maybe do a fun event or go out to dinner once a month or things like that, things that I couldn't do before moving into that space. I saw a couple of years ago that a unit came available. They don't come available very often at this space, but it was a 2-bedroom for like $800 a month in South Minneapolis, which is like a historic rent rate at this point. So that's my story about Park Co-op.
Thank you. And then last but not least, I just wanted to give a nod to market rate co-ops, because it's another type of housing cooperative and whenever I think about market rate, I always think about the co-ops that overlook Central Park. But I know they exist in many ways and forms. But essentially, this allows cooperative members to buy and sell shares at whatever the market is at that time. So owners can buy more shares in a market rate. This is when I was talking about some cooperatives may have more lift or heaviness in their voting power, such as market rate co-ops. So owners can buy shares in a market rate co-op, therefore have more decision-making power. And so sometimes these don't often exhibit equitable means, but it's just an example that I wanted to point out too. And then moving into the last bit before cooperative gallery walk, so equity, patronage, and preferred stock. So like I mentioned earlier, for credit unions, you may have to put down $5 or $10 to be part of that co-op. So equity is the investment that you make into the cooperative that is based on cooperative principles and bylaws, which you establish. Just quickly, cooperative principles and bylaws. So you can write those as a co-op and work with lawyers to figure out how you want your co-op to govern. But you can also lend other bylaws and principles from other cooperatives as inspiration too, or use the other cooperative principles and governance to figure out what you do. But you can also change the language. So for example, Mandela Market, which we'll be talking about in a second, they were really not feeling Robert's rules, and so they figured out their own language to use. They took that out and figured out how they wanted to be in community together. So basically, principles, governance, bylaws are really important in trying to help me figure out the equity, patronage, and preferred stock piece too. And then patronage is what you get out of the cooperative, the share or the profit share, I should say. So patronage is a dividend, also known as a refund, is a distribution that is given by a cooperative to its members or investors. So for example, let's say for REI at the end of the year, you might get like 10% back. Now for housing cooperatives, you might all decide how you want to do your patronage. Let's say your patronage is, I don't know, is $100 per piece per member owner. You could decide that, well, in the governance and bylaws, that at least 10% of that goes back to the cooperative for maintenance, and then the rest is profit shared within that cooperative. So once again, you get to establish like how you want to set up these roles and structures for your cooperative. And last but not least, preferred stock. I just wanted to outline this because we'll be talking about finance in 2022 too. But essentially, preferred stock is another way for cooperatives to figure out like how to get the co-op funded. And so you could come to an entity or an organization and sell a stock. And that preferred stock owners don't have any voting rights. And this allows cooperatives to raise equity and capital from a wider pool of people. So for example, here in the Twin Cities, we have philanthropy, but sometimes philanthropy is a little slow or not as open or whatever there may be to funding cooperatives. So this is one way we can get around that, is by offering preferred stock. For example, Nexus Community Partners owns some stock in Rootspring, just recognizing that we celebrate and honor Black cooperative work, and Black cooperative work are happening in our ecosystem. So one way that they wanted to do this is that they asked us to figure out like how to set up preferred stock between Nexus, some lawyers, and Rootsprings in order to like continue to fund their work. Now some cooperatives may also have like a nonprofit and then like a cooperative entity. So for example, Rootsprings is one. They have the Field of Rootsprings, which is like their nonprofit, and then the Rootsprings cooperative. So the nonprofit does all the fundraising work, and then they're able to funnel some of that into the cooperative too. So you can structure these in different ways as well. And now to the fun part where I let everyone else talk too, but the cooperative gallery walk. So the cooperative gallery walk is just a way for us to talk and learn about either cooperatives that have existed in our past or cooperatives that currently exist today. I do want to, oh wait, Ebrook has cartoons like the little, can you talk more about that, Megan or Damon?
Oh, sorry. When you were talking about the bylaws and you were encouraging people to be creative, one of the coolest things I've seen is like you can actually write cartoons for your bylaws, right? And the best advice is write down what you are doing, not like what somebody else does. So I think that was a really good point. I just was saying that if you need an out there example, that's a good one.
Oh, I hope I can find those and share that, because that sounds really fun too. A different way to engaging with it too, instead of just like words or Robert's rules, all these very like strict structures that exist. Just recognizing that we can live beyond those structures too, especially when we're doing cooperative work that is so human-centered. So yeah, the cooperative gallery walk. So when you all got your folders, you had some of the cooperative gallery in there too, so you can use that, or we also have it online. So basically I'll be putting you into groups of 3 and maybe 2. And we'll be going, well, 3 because we have 3 stories. How many? 3, 6, 9 of all of us together. And we'll basically be interacting with the cooperative stories. Now, you can read as much as you want, or you can read just a couple. You can make that decision as a group. You can identify a person that reads all of them, or do the shared reading, or share screens. But essentially, like I said, it's cooperatives that have either existed in our past, or exist today, or existed sometime for us. And so in the cooperative gallery walk, there'll be the story and then some questions. So I'd just like you to respond to some of those questions, or you can also write down whatever comes up for you, whatever you feel, whatever you think about, whatever identifiers that you make. So yeah, let's do that. Before we start, I do have, so I'll give about 20 to 25 minutes to read through the stories, and then we'll come back and share out. So for this, since we're doing it virtually, there's 2 ways you can engage or share out your things. You can either identify a note taker and just write notes in your own notes, or there is a Google Word document where you can write down your responses. Or if you want, there's also a Jamboard that you can use to identify your responses. And in the Jamboard, then you can also draw or star things or add pictures, etc. So you can just get as creative as you want to. And then we'll come back and have a share out. I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting anything. So the group will be divided by, so if you're in group 1, then you'll have the readings for group 1. Oh, I can't find it.
Let me know if you need me to do anything, Nikuli.
Yeah, it's just taking a second to load.
Okay. Mhm.
Actually, it's not even opening up at all. Okay, there we are. Okay, cool. There we go. All right, so here is the Google Doc, and then everyone should be an editor. If you're having trouble, just please let me know. And then Danielle, could you help me break us into groups? I gave up hosting.
Sure. So
Hello, welcome back.
Hello.
hello. Are you tired, Lauren?
You're muted.
This is right. I said tired. No, I'm digesting. It kind of does the same thing.
Okay.
Yo, this website is sweet. These resources are amazing. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was still stuck on I was thinking about the Wilder Foundation and the issue with the property management. I kept thinking about it throughout the entire. I was like, it took us a while to find the thing because I was at a kind of in space. I was following some of the models, but most of my brain power was going towards like that's an opportunity of property management. I'm like, a lot of these things have to happen simultaneously for what we need. I'm like, how can that be a school? How can that be a trade school? How can that be supported? How can that, how can that be a way for funding to kind of to go through? Because I still have to trust that the government is still mostly intact. But that's still access to like government funds to get people to get school paid for, grants to get school paid for, going directly back into the cooperative and us building a field of black and brown, maybe like black and brown tradespeople. I kept stop thinking about that.
Yeah, that's a strategy of the cooperative community of New West Jackson. So they brought all of these. So there's a lot of people hear about Jackson Rising. There's also the cooperative community of New West Jackson. They have origins in the same space, but they've split apart some years ago, but they're all in Jackson together. But cooperative community of New West Jackson has worked to buy dozens and dozens of houses, and they've worked for the last number of years to engage the folks that are in that neighborhood. And one of their strategies is to train up folks that want to learn about carpentry, electric work, and all those different things to be able to update, remodel, build new housing infrastructure there. So yeah, Lauren. All right.
That is too good. That is too good.
Yeah. Okay, so thanks for coming back. Okay, so before we get into some of the questions, I just wanted to name that. So this resource, the Cooperative Gallery Walk, this was developed by Danielle in partnership with TESSA, which is the Toolbox for Education and Social Action. So while this was developed here, we really do want to make sure that everyone has access and can use this. So if you ever want to use this in your cooperative journey, in your cooperative communities, please feel free to do so. I can attach like the guide, the facilitator's guide too, along with it. We just ask that you credit us when you do, but yes, it is free for use. And if you want to add a story, like I don't know who had your Mama House Cooperative, but that's a local cooperative run by Elda Amake, who was part of North Star two cohorts ago. If you ever want to add your cooperative story to it too, please let us know, and we'll be happy to do that. All right, so before we get into some of these bigger questions, can I just get some first reaction of like, how are you feeling after reading some of this cooperative work?
I would say very inspired, right? A sense of empowerment and a lot of hope, you know, just being rooted in solidarity and this notion of land sovereignty. These two words, land and sovereignty, true freedom, is what is coming up. And our cooperative had Yo Mama's House, you know, that was lit. So thank you.
Yeah. Anything else come up for folks as they were reading and engaging with some of this work? Okay, so another question that I have is, so what is your biggest takeaway from this activity with the cooperative gallery and their stories? And your cooperative work too. What's your biggest takeaway?
I think that it can be done.
Yeah, definitely. It can be done. You're all doing it, which is amazing. And we have all these other folks too in this, we like to call it the cooperative ecosystem, but the cooperative ecosystem too that have done this work. So yes, it can be done. As you said, our geniuses, let's put our geniuses to work. Yeah. What is one interesting thing that you really learned?
I'll just throw one word out: sacrifice. And the dedication and the patience necessary to live these dreams out, make it a reality.
Yeah. So do you think anything else within these stories relates to your own cooperative economic project in any way?
Yeah, I could speak again on Yo Mama's House. As it relates to our cooperative, they really have a focus point on art and on healing. And that is something that we're being intentional with the space that we're creating, right? Just knowing how impactful it is to express ourselves and to share our personal narratives with each other and those experiences and how we grow and act. So that's one thing that is related to art. And another big takeaway is this African proverb was coming up for me, just in the sense of like, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And this takeaway that I had.
Yeah, definitely. And since you're talking about your Mama House Cooperative, so I met Elda Amake during the cooperative, but I know that Danielle, that's like basically family for her. And like the work that she's been doing and how artistry, like now we're friends on Facebook, so I get to see all the artistry that she does too. But the work that she's been able to do all these years through her artistry and all the stories that she's told and all the ways that she's created her own community and then taken that and basically like just applied this cooperative lens. And she was able to even buy a house just last year too for her cooperative in North Minneapolis. So it's just really, yeah, like you said, Dr. Jolly, we're doing it, and it can be done in so many ways, shapes, or forms. It can be done by things that are just really things that we've been doing and are really passionate about. And so, yeah, just really, really inspiring work. Anyone else? How does this work? How these stories, everything that we've talked about earlier today with the community ownership, or even the even the Black feminist work, like how does that relate to your own cooperative economic project?
This makes it more real. Like one thing I've been struggling with is pulling my ideas out of this fantasy world and being like, okay, it can be established. Right now, Laurent and I are looking at the cooperative model of Match Co-op. So I recently bought 2 more houses in East Phillips and already filled up, by the way. I didn't have a chance. As soon as they bought those houses, they're full. And but looking at their bylaws and looking at their what else did they have? They had bylaws and they had a business plan, and just looking at it, and then today I just see like all the other options for a business plan, which is a little overwhelming. I'm not gonna lie to you, but it's definitely super helpful to see, especially that there are BIPOC cooperatives. I had no idea there were BIPOC cooperatives in the Twin Cities, no clue. Mm-hmm. And so it's just this information that I plan on applying, and then I need a housing situation that is fruitful, that it's nice like that. So yeah.
Pup was in our last cohort, and their work, as far as I can remember how they explained it, was basically coming from like the student organizing with housing cooperatives. Well, they lived in a student cooperative at the U and basically organized and continued to organize these housing cooperatives, but also was really very much married with like mutual aid too, which is a huge huge component of cooperation and collectivity. So yeah, CUP is an amazing every time we were in space with CUP and their team, we were always so like filled. So definitely a great resource, and definitely great work that's happening too. Amongst all the stories, either from this morning, earlier today, are there any stories, or is there any one person that is like that you're just really feeling pulled by as we talk about this work and as you think about your cooperative vision?
What do you mean by stories?
Oh, this gallery walk that we just had.
Oh, yes.
We can also talk about who got the Black Panthers.
Up to the Black Panther.
You had them?
Dr. Jolly? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Did you want Black Panther story to go right now?
Oh, no, go ahead. No, if you have something to share, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on some good insight Dr. Jolly shared on, Fannie Lou Hamer. So we talked about Fannie Lou Hamer, such a giant, incredible spirit. But like, her story comes out of the base, the agriculture, like the farming base, right? But I think there's wisdom that we can learn in our other cooperative models about patience and the fact that poor farmers had to wait to reap the harvest. And what did we do in those times in between where there wasn't necessarily a benefit coming back? And like the commitment, the dedication, and consistency, and how far down the road that fruit might be useful. And so that was something really powerful.
Yeah. Fannie Lou Hamer is definitely one person that I feel like I always go back to when we talk about this cooperative work. I'm trying to remember the quote that I had in my thesis by her, but now I can't. But I mean, she's got so many. But yeah, the way that she just did her work, the hog farming, how like affordable and easy it was for, well, in terms of like accessibility for the farmers, and then like the work and the vision of that too. So yeah. Did you have something you wanted to add, Dr. Jolly? I just saw that. I think you unmuted.
Oh yeah, I think it's just they say the simple confounds the wise, right? So it was a simple solution that just transferred. You have a group of hogs, they have babies, then to the next family, you get it through, and in the meantime you grow. So thinking about what we want to do and what's the river fall effect, what's the continual piece? Because there's a sense of permanence, I think, in the plan.
Yeah.
What that Kai and I talked about was trust. Not, you just wake up one day and get an idea and it's over. I mean, it's a lifelong journey. So how do you go into it with that intention there?
Yeah. Thank you. Megan and Damon?
Oh, somebody just was asking who got the Black Panthers. And so
yeah.
I was just like, we did.
Oh, do you want to tell us about the Black Panthers?
Sure. There is a lot to know about the Black Panthers. I'm assuming everybody knows enough to know they're quite vilified, but they're the reason why we have like free lunch programs and stuff. And I think those types of things are really important. The main question they ask is, do we relate to how media coverage, to how the Black Panther organizers talked about media coverage for Black people? I would say yes. And one of the things, the takeaways for me from that is that we have to be careful about drawing conclusions from popularly available resources on our own history, right? Trust the wisdom of the people around you who have looked you in the eyes and told you the truth a lot of times, but like, and you want to learn from the examples around you. But the article is basically saying like they don't talk about the food programs, they don't talk about the other things they did to help people survive. They just talk about the sensationalists walking around with guns thing, which is also a thing they did to help people survive. So we just want to be careful about that kind of thing in general. But it's also important to remember that take the free lunch programs. Everybody thinks they do that to help us. Everybody thinks that's one of the things the government does. It's so beneficial and beautiful. And I'm not thumbing my nose at the people that like feed babies all over the nation every day who are hungry. I'm real stoked that happens, let's be clear. But they didn't do that to feed babies. They did that to keep us from feeding our babies, right? To keep us from having time with them where we could tell them their stories and tell them that they're special and they mean something. Right? So that even the white kids that came through those programs too and ate food sometimes might hear that, oh shit, Black people know some stuff and did some stuff and are feeding me and are really good people. So instead they put them in the school that they attend all day, make them feel different in a way that isn't special. And so it's a weird thing. Lots of sides to lots of things.
Yeah. Yeah. The first time I actually got a more robust understanding of all the work that they did, as I think through the story when it was first developed, like so many things. Danielle named some initiatives providing, feeding people, the health clinics, sickle cell project, education, childcare, housing, and so much more. And yet the narrative in the media definitely has been so distorted. And has taken away from all the amazing and great work that they did in community, and the work that is like very much embedded in community. So yeah.
And going back to the theme of Black feminism, a lot of this work was also done by Black women, right? So it's one of those like we don't talk about it because then we got to talk about who was doing it kind of things too. So that is a takeaway, although oftentimes it's phrased as like hyper masculinity as a problem with the Black Panthers. I like to make sure we reframe that as regular ass American masculinity practiced by Black men, because that shit is toxic. So like you got to be real careful about how much we play into these narratives, but it is a thing that we should learn. Is like there's reasons why they didn't talk about this specific work that are revealing of our internal dynamics as well.
Yeah. So before we transition, are there any anything else that you wanted to share about this? Any thoughts about some of this work?
I'm kind of embarrassed. What was our group threes? I'm sorry, you still talking about Megan and David? Oh, I'm so rude.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so my group we're a little confused about what we were doing, but how did we find the assigned group that we were supposed to study? Was mine the Jackson community? Because I'm definitely, after especially you said that to me, I'll be looking more into them after this.
If you had group 3, it was, I'm looking, so the
group 2 maybe.
Oh, maybe 2. So each in the chat is like group 1, 2, and 3, and then all the stories and the questions are under there. Let me see. So one of them would have been the National Training School for Women and Girls, Nanny Helen Burroughs. But yeah, you can go back and definitely read that. And all of these, I printed all of these stories out too, so you should have them in like your folder that you got. So if you want to interact with them, you can definitely, the ones that Dr. Jolly is holding up. And then I think the links are also in the Google Docs or they're in the reflection pieces too, for the ones that are current. But yeah, anything that you want to say? Yeah, anything else? I invite anyone to add something to close out the section before we move into the next section. Well, I guess I will say something then. This is my favorite activity ever, and normally the way we'd do it is we'd all be in space together and we'd literally physically go around the room reading this and then leaving sticky notes and then being able to interact with our comments and so forth. But we had to adapt it for a virtual world. So yeah, I hope you love these stories. And also find some inspiration from the stories too for the work that you'll be doing. I'd love to have these cooperatives, your cooperative work definitely reflected in this too. I think documenting is so important, like documenting our own stories, our own narratives, our own work is so incredibly important, which is why we're able to look back at this work and like really just feel the love and feel the work and feel this dedication and sacrifice and actually like understand what was actually happening versus like what we've been told or things that have been left out or just like intentionally left out. So yeah, I just hope that I'm excited for all the cooperative work that you're doing and excited to document that too, so we can continue to engage and learn about that for generations to come. All right, Kai, take it away.
Thank you, Nunkuli. And actually, I have 2 requests. Thank you very much for that activity. 2 requests, Nunkuli, if you could set up so that everyone has access. We're gonna watch Arc of Justice, which is a great film. Some of you may have seen it. It's about 22 minutes. So Nunkuli, like at any point that you wanna just put the link to the actual film in the chat, I'm gonna just give a little bit of context without taking away the experience for you to see the film. But the other one is that if you could share your screen, because I had some internet connection issues earlier, but I'll mostly just speak right now. I would like to just, for those who haven't heard of this film, Arc of Justice, in the spirit of what Nunkuli also said earlier, but as we go into this as a grounding, like, feel free to connect the materials that we're gonna, go through in this Arc of Justice film and, look at your cooperative practice. We encourage you to do that, learning so much from your wisdom. So storytelling is medicine, and maybe you've heard this film, Arc of Justice. It's about New Communities, Inc., also known as NCI. So I might refer to NCI or New Communities, Inc. It's pioneered at the time in 1969, a new model of grassroots development and empowerment that has now spread across the globe as a community land trust. So the film has been a tool to organize and inform people about the community land trust model. And what's really cool is that I'm going to share some resources later as we get into the film, but there's a lot of screenings that do similar work to what we're doing in learning spaces. But a little bit of an overview is that Arc of Justice traces the remarkable journey of new communities and the struggle for racial justice and economic empowerment amongst Black folks in Southwest Georgia. Big ups to Georgia. NCI was created in '69, as I had said, in Albany, Georgia, by leaders of the civil rights movement, including Congressman John Lewis and Charles and Shirley Sherrod, to help secure economic independence for African-American families. 15 years, NCI cooperatively farmed nearly 6,000 acres, the largest tract of land in the United States owned by Black folks at the time. But racist opposition, as you'll see, prevents them from the planning of build 500 affordable homes as part of their community land trust. So I'm gonna drop a couple things in here. I wanna share with you the website to the film. I've seen it 3 times. I saw it in my environmental justice class. And I also watched it as Nkuli asked me to share about the film. Because of time, I'm not going to go into any more context about this, but what I thought was to share some questions that we can talk about at the end of the film, just as a learning circle discussion. But I thought I'd give them to you now because we're towards the end of our visit together, and that way we can have some context to bring after. So I'm gonna go ahead and share the questions, and we can watch the film and come back. But it's going to be popcorn style. So I also want you to know that you don't necessarily have, there's no rules here. We don't have to speak on these questions that I put in necessarily. But I put them here, and Nkuli, if you would like to play the film, that would be wonderful. And we'll come back and discuss afterwards. Thank you.
There were many African Americans who were sharecroppers and tenant farmers in Georgia, in Alabama, in Mississippi, in Tennessee. And when they attempted to register to vote, they were forced off of the land. They were living on plantations, living on some other person's land.
You can help people fight for their rights, but when they don't have a base, when they don't have something that they own and they get kicked off the property, that's a really, really, really tough position.
There was this growing feeling on the part of so many individuals and leaders within the movement that if you had your own piece of land, you could do things. You wouldn't be dependent on others. Charles Sherrod first went to Southwest Georgia in 1961 after the Freedom Rise to do voter registration in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Because you had thousands of low-income African American. They could not register to vote simply because of the color of their skin.
We were building a better life for our people. We were always doing voter registration, and that we were always doing direct action.
Albany, Georgia. We have been called upon and have heard the voice of democracy saying, get up from where you are and go to a land that I will show you all.
When they began to arrest us, we filled the jails in Albany. Thought that'd be enough for us to fill the jails. But they started sending our people to adjacent counties. One boy got his jaw broken, and one lady was kicked in her rear and lost her baby. A lot of violence occurred and a lot of hurt from our people.
My father was murdered March 25th, 1965. He was murdered by a white man who was never prosecuted. I made a commitment on the night of my father's death that I would not leave the South, that I would stay and devote my life to working for change. I was actually 17 years old, was not involved in the civil rights movement at that time, and didn't know how I would carry out that commitment. I'd been hearing about this person, Charles Sherrod. I went to my first mass meeting, and I saw how he had led people there in Baker County to stand up. And they were saying all of these great things in the mass meeting and planning for more demonstrations and planning the other things to be done and singing. Oh, the singing was just great. And I remember being in that meeting and just crying. And I knew then that this was a way that I could live true to the commitment that I made. And by June of '65, we started the Baker County movement with the help of Charles Sherrod and others from SNCC.
I woke up this morning in my mind. Stay on freedom. I woke up this morning in my mind.
I was canvassing on the plantation. I knocked on the door of a man and his wife. They promised me they'd come to the mass meeting. They come to the church with their 5 children. They told me that they had been kicked off the plantation, had nowhere to go for the night. How many people whose doors I've knocked on got kicked out of their homes with their children, without a job? And I was partially the cause of it. So I lived in deep guilt and frustration. So that's how the spark of the need for land came to me. Seeing the land, just the land itself, the beauty of the land, the purity of the land, and the acknowledgement that all power comes from the land, and the land comes from God. All power comes from the land. Absolute power comes from God. And that's my ministry. It's still my ministry.
Slater King played a key role. He was the only black real estate agent in the area, and that's how we knew that the Featherfield Farm in Lee County was available. It was 1969, I believe, when he was killed in a car wreck.
Slater King and I were very close. Losing him was like losing a brother.
So devastating to what we were trying to do, which meant that Sherrod had to step up even more if we were going to hold on to this.
I hadn't raised any money in my life except a place to stay and food to eat. That's my only hustling capabilities. But I got on the road and kissed my wife goodbye. Said, I'm going to get this money. And I raised it. Somehow I raised it over $1 million.
The idea behind New Communities was to take civil rights one step further into economic independence and economic rights, using agriculture as the economic base. New Communities was near Albany, Georgia, in southwest Georgia. It was 6,000 acres of land. It was the largest tract of land owned by African Americans in the country at the time. So it was a source of pride.
I think black people, even if they were not involved, felt proud that we could actually get our hands on that much land. You know, land meant power. You know, land established you as somebody.
It was a courageous and brilliant idea to bring people together in a new way of thinking and a new way of doing something. Cooperative land ownership, not just an individual, but a community. Many of us during the early days of the movement, we spoke about and we talked about, and even today some of us still talk and preach about the building of a beloved community.
More cooperative living, cooperative buying, cooperative selling, cooperative, just about everything cooperative.
We received a planning grant of nearly $100,000 from the Office of Economic Opportunity. So we've gone from fighting for our rights to now having rights and trying to do something with it. It was some exciting times, you know. You're planning villages, you're planning education, you're planning all of these things. You basically have a chance to plan a life and lives and plan ways to help our people.
We had a list of 500 families who were willing to live on this land the way we proposed. You would own your home, but you'd lease the land underneath your home. Some of us were naive enough to believe that having been called lazy, not up to anything, ignorant, that white people would praise us that we're finally doing something for ourselves, on our own, with our own money, with our own resources, and sticking together.
Just didn't think people would fight you when you were trying to simply help yourself. You're not asking them for anything. So I was really shocked at the opposition. I mean, they just came at us in every way to try to stop us, to block us, to do anything to get that land away from us.
They shot in our offices. They diluted our fertilizer. They wouldn't give us loans.
Washington had assured us that we would get the major grant to implement a lot of these plans that we had worked so hard to develop. But that didn't happen. Lester Maddox was governor of the state of Georgia when the money was officially vetoed. We couldn't build homes, we couldn't implement all of the many plans we had put in place, but we could hold on to the land by farming, and that's what we were doing.
We grew everything from strawberries and sugarcane and collard greens and turnip greens and grapes. Part of my responsibilities was to market the hogs and the cows. We grew seed corn and soybeans and everything that could grow.
We were doing quite well after a while. We could make enough money to pay the land notes and expand the farm operation. But then we had a drought, and then followed by a second year of drought. So we decided, just like all farmers were doing, to go to Farmers Home Administration to borrow money. The farm manager and my husband went over to the office in Dawson, Georgia, and the guy said, "You'll get a loan here over my dead body." And he meant it. We actually faced foreclosure, and Sherrod was out traveling around the country trying to raise money.
Well, we're about to lose our land. And it's a thing of a lot of pain to me, to my family, to other families that are associated with this project. And we don't see any way out of it.
We were basically kicked off the land, and what they did was they dug holes and pushed all of our buildings over in them. Every building but that main house and the shed that was on the property, they dug a hole and pushed them in them. So we were gone.
We want justice, Lord, come by here. We want justice, Lord, come by here.
So many black farmers were losing their land because they didn't have access to credit. We would meet and we'd talk about the fact that we have to do something about black land loss. We need to file a lawsuit.
We want justice, Lord, come by here. We want justice, Lord, come by.
One of the heroines in this story is Rose Sanders. And, here's this African-American attorney in Alabama dedicated to the idea that this can be done and that this case was triable and winnable. And she doggedly pursued it.
We didn't hear anything else on our case until the night of July 8, 2009. That's when our lawyer called our house I answered the phone. She said, Shirley, have you heard? I said, no. She said, we won. She's all excited. You know, it's 10 years now, you know. So I said, really? She said, you want to guess how much? I said, well, Rose is at least $1 million. And she said, Shirley, it's 12. So it was just so unbelievable. We were happy, and I think both of us cried. You know, it was really, really something. Just, we fought. We were hoping that we'd get something. But now we could continue with the dream. Someone suggested that we should look at Cypress Pond Plantation. So one Sunday morning, we came out here. We went in that big antebellum home, and I just had a problem with antebellum. Why would we want an antebellum home, a plantation? That place was once owned by the largest slave owner and the wealthiest man in Georgia. Then I started looking at this and saying, this is where we were supposed to be. What a statement to our people, that this could go from a slave owner to descendants of slaves.
We're just in the development stage. We got the pecans in production, about 80 acres of pecans. We're getting the irrigation put in on them. This year we're expecting a great crop because we will have water. My major was horticulture, and I've had a farm of my own. Of course, I lost my farm back in '85 when we had a disaster, and prior to that we had a lot of drought. And at the same time that the new community lost their property. And that's why I'm here so determined to make things work and do whatever I can.
Losing the farm was torturous and very sad. But to have the settlement, to have this land, who could have predicted this road and this path? In some ways, it is the arc of justice.
We all own it together. It's ours. We can actually start here to help people understand land trusts, to help start land trusts. Maybe get people to listen to us a little more when you bring them to this place out here now. They know everything is possible. We couldn't have done any better, I don't think. Looking for a place after all of these years, after the loss we've been through, to really help our people heal, to help get them training, and to get them working together for the good of all.
Where do you come from, my? But if it hadn't been for, but if it hadn't been for my Canada, I would have been married a long time ago. I woke up this morning in my mind. Stay on freedom. I woke up this morning in my mind. Stay on freedom.
Wow. So thank you everyone for checking this film out. Before we get into the questions, I just wanted to acknowledge a little further acknowledge Black land loss a little more. So New Communities NCI was hardly alone in losing its land. Throughout history, many other Black farmers in Georgia and elsewhere experienced similar heartbreak over the course of 60 years. In 1920, there were 926,000 Black farmers in the United States. They own 16 million acres of land. By 1997, fewer than 20,000 of the nation's farmers were Black and own only 2 million. So from 16 to 2 million. So although the causes of this decline were only touched a little on the film, based on, our own knowledge and experience, it's just interesting to think about what things contributed to this drastic decline. So at this point, just would like to open it up for discussion, and so happy to be in community with everyone. I put some questions in the chat, but we could also just start with our reactions, thoughts, and feelings about the film and our work and the ties.
I can begin. Can you hear me?
You're a little low, my friend. We can hear you, but I think your volume's a little low.
Mic check, mic check. How is it now? All right, cool. Well, yeah, I was just gonna say some of my thoughts and emotions. Well, like just from watching, I had many different emotions. I was actually over here in tears for a part of that, but it was like tears of joy though, just seeing the resiliency and the ability to build in spite of the barriers that existed, right? And I got like this sense of empowerment, because just in this day and age, I feel like in this work, I run into so many different situations where I might feel powerless, right? And I need to have serenity, and I gotta like, just humble myself at times, but also I'm just very frustrated, with our placement, with the powers that be. And some of those emotions started to come up as well, just with the reality that when we build, how the outside folks always look to destroy what we build, so I think it's very important that we continue to be resilient and also have the dignity and the pride to protect what is ours, so yeah, I'll stop right there. Because at this point, it's the battle of the bullet. You feel me? I just got to echo that was coming up for me as well. Brother Malcolm X's speech, right? My brother Kais, he often uses this term reparations or revolution, and I also see it as like this sense of balance as well, like working simultaneously as we reverse engineer a system that is being constructed that's not beneficial for all of us, to be very intentional of creating our own system that we know will, protect and help us thrive. Mic check. Is anybody saying anything? I think my sound is tripping again.
No, we heard you.
You sound good.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Much love. Yep.
Okay, cool. Oh, and I like the James Brown quote too. Absolutely.
I can't say for sure it originated from James Brown, but I saw a documentary on him, and that resonated with what you said to me.
Was also thinking about the story that our elders shared with us too, I believe in the first session, about the land and a grandfather that left the land for like his grandchildren, you know, and how they realized that like, yo, this is the power he was talking about, right? I just think that's so amazing. Land.
Oh. I thought I saw someone else unmute. But we watch this at least once a year. This time it's twice this year, which I'm so happy about. And I think like relating back to like the cooperative gallery walk stories, there are so many cooperatives that were so disrupted by systems in such violent ways. And to be able to see such a great win and restoration in the story is always just so beautiful. And the fact that they're still going on, like I posted like an NPR interview that they did from 2019. They're still going strong, and they're still a resource for other for other cooperators. I think anyone can go to their center and learn more about what they do. But yeah, it's just a testament to, I don't know, some ancestral work pulling for them to be able to get that, to be able to first of all get some of the wealth back, well, the money back, and be able to continue to build on the legacies in which they started from.
So I'll share them in the order I think is best. One thing that stuck out to me that I think it's important for us to learn is that like as Black people, when we build visible paragons of success, we have to be ready and prepared for not only the state, but like some random upset white people with access to lots of fire to just show up. Because we know better. And I don't want to speak ill of them. They're lovely people. I had a great time this summer and learned a lot. One of my frustrations with SELC as an organization, and they're aware of it, is that, and one of the reasons why I couldn't see myself working there instead of building my own place, is that as a Black person doing this work, I don't get to stop my analysis at, yeah, I want to do the happy law where we just build. I'm like, yeah, great. And then what you gonna do when they show up with guns about it? You know? So I often talk to people about what you do with your Last Supper moment. How do you make it matter? You know? And that's why I kind of like how they persisted through what a lot of people would consider the end, right? And that's an important thing, is that bankruptcy is a tool for some of these rich people. Part of the reason we make these organizations is like, if they need to die, they need to die, but the organization can die without us dying, right? So there's this fear of bankruptcy in poor people because of the practical realities of what that would do to us that is just different on this scale. So that's an important takeaway for me. And then the other thing that stood out for me as I was like watching that narrative play out, we think about land loss, but that is part and parcel of somebody else's land gain, right? So like we conceive of Bill Gates as the super wealthy dude and we think his money is all ones and zeros. That dude owns like hella acres by his damn self, right? And he's never dug anything. He's not gonna work that. He doesn't value it, but we bent our whole system to capital. And he thinks he can turn a dollar there by being exploitative, and he can't. And so our system prioritizes that. But I think one of the cool things about cooperative economics is now we're bending it back away from just how many dollars do you have. What is your purpose? What is your tie to the land? If the land is power, right? As much as I'm here for the ballot or the bullet, you know, in terms of the theory, I would choose land. I would still choose land. You know what I mean? Because that to me is power, like they were saying. And I like how he talked about it as part of his ministry, as part of how he believes he relates to the divine, to his community, to whatever else. And I think those types of relationships to land, even if you're not religious, a relationship to land that is not built on the expectation that you will get some more imaginary dollars from somebody later, but is based on like your father gave it to you and taught you a lesson, or that's where, you know, your little sister learned to ride a bike. That kind of stuff, it is way more valuable and sustainable and good for the land and the people on it.
I don't know. It's that movie was awesome, but it was also very heavy because we have been facing the same problems generation after generation. And while I'm excited and encouraged by each generation wanting to address the same problem, I am feeling like there needs to be more of a united play. I just finished, I always sound like I just finished doing research, but I've been doing a ton of research this year. And I've been going to different communities. And what we just saw in that movie is happening in Flint. It's happening in communities across this country. And so as we think about the cooperative nature of our work, I want us to think about the cooperative nature of a solution, because I don't want 2 generations from now people to be following the same pattern of addressing the same problems. So my prayer for all of us is that whatever solution that you bring to the table, let's design a plan for permanence so that no more do we have to face these same things. Because, you know, maybe I'm a little further down the road than some, but it dampens my excitement about the win, because this is a win that prayerfully they should have gotten generations ago. So I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but I feel like, you know, when I open up my work, I start at the plantation, you know, because the plantation is evidence that when we work together, we can create a wealth superpower. Only difference was the business model wasn't ours. So is there a way for us to collectively own that business model and just take it to another level? Because we've done it. Our legacy proves it. And so I'm grateful for this program, because it's reminding me of so many things, but I'm also walking away with a deeper prayer request, because y'all got the solution, but I just want us to come together and figure out how to make it bigger scale, you know? So it's not to diminish any small idea, but our community needs a big win that lasts. It does.
I was just saying, like, I think I mentioned it earlier, like a big, like, yes. Like I've been really looking into what it would take to even get international help consideration, because we have access, we have special access. We're still in the US. There are still some things that are intact, and there are still a lot of people, you mentioned the Black Panthers earlier, like that model that they used for getting the healthcare, like took networking between doctors and they got support. And I have to check me on this, but I do believe Cuba helped out a little bit here and there. But it's just like international support. It's just like, it could easily be, because it's like, it's not just our struggle. If it's a struggle that is shared throughout the world. and people have resources and products, and we have access, and we've done it before with the UNIA, with having ships, the abilities to transfer things. But I'm very excited. My where I do get tripped up is how do we get everyone together to get the ball rolling. I'm going to be a substitute teacher. I'm really excited, but I'm also very curious to see what the youth have to say. What they're, what they're thinking about, how they're thinking, how they're forming, how they feel about how their needs are being considered. Because it's like the capitalist mode is showing all of its weaknesses, blatant racism. It's like now we have to come together. How are we going to get together? Like, when are we going to get together?
Lauren, I think they're gonna want you to be their permanent teacher. Just wanted to show some love there. Katie Rose, did you want to speak, or certainly no pressure, but would you like to chime in a little bit? We have a couple minutes before we're gonna ask folks to do an evaluation, just so that we can improve our work. Maybe not.
You're not here. I just wanted to add real quick, Kai, sorry. Kind of speaking to some of the things that Dr. Jolly was saying, that so some of these things I've been thinking about too, as I work for the cooperative work here in the Twin Cities, thinking about how we really organize and build these really strong foundational pieces, especially because we've been reading and seeing so much about collective work be disrupted in so many ways. And we found there's currently a working group that Danielle and Kai are leading around the Housing Cooperative Network with other organizations that have been also organizing. And it's so weird because whenever we're in conversation, I missed the last meeting, but whenever we're in conversation, like we're all coming up against these different barriers, whether they're local, state, funding, etc. So now we're trying to figure out like how do we work together so that we can clearly outline what those barriers are and like help each other like move along those processes along the way to build these housing cooperatives, to build cooperatives that are not disrupted. And I feel like Kai can maybe talk more about this, but there's currently a working group at Humphrey that's helping us also answer these questions. Kai's class that's led by Shannon Jones from NOL, from Hope Community. Thinking about like really, okay, let's look at this cooperative ecosystem from a local level, the government level, philanthropic level. Okay, let's look at it locally, nationally, and even internationally. What is actually happening in those spaces? What are lessons that we can take that can help inform this work? So I just wanted to acknowledge that I hear you, and we're also definitely in alignment and thinking about those things, because that's the questions that we've been asking ourselves too, for as long as North Star and this cooperative work has come to light at Nexus.
Thanks, Nunkuli. And I'd like to just add the other portion of that in the deliverables is that how do housing cooperatives impact individuals, family, and community? And so that'll be the second part. Does anyone else have anything they're just like itching to say about this topic before we go into evaluation mode?
I don't necessarily think I want to do this before we go into evaluation mode, but I'm itching to close us out for the session. Can I do that? Okay, cool.
Oh, after evaluation, or how should we go about this?
Yeah, I was thinking after evaluation. Oh wait, where? I don't know. You guys tell me.
Yeah. Well, looks like everyone's unanimously down for that. So I have a question. To do the evaluation, do we do poll? How does that work, Nunkuli? Just push poll?
Yeah, just push poll. I'm not the host or the co-host anymore, but
okay.
I can just push poll and then I'll bring it up.
How about that? And Oh, this one's the rethinking, but okay. So it says rethinking, but it should be uniform with each session, right? Okay, so it does say rethinking capitalism, which is our last one, but you can take this and it'll be pretty uniform each time. So feel free to do that, and then we'll close out.
Oh.
Looks like we just have 3 more, and then my brother Louis Blaze can close us out.
Man, I just peeped. You got that Get Down coffee on, man. That's fire.
Yeah, I was seeing that too. I was like, uh-oh, I've been there.
Well, I can't wait to go. I haven't been there yet. I was just talking to Brother Houston, though. I love that, man.
Oh, you talking about Houston White?
Yeah, yeah.
As a good guy.
Yeah. When I went Friday to get this hoodie, the line was around the block. I was really excited for them.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
And I bought a light roast called Drip Drip. That's a very Black title. I love that.
And they need more vegan options, though. I was telling them, like, yo, there's a whole lot of Black vegans, Minneapolis and St. Paul. Come on, let's go, let's go.
Yeah, the wave is here. The wave is here. It's rising. I feel like I keep meeting vegans left and right. Maybe I'm on my way to becoming a vegan or something. I don't know what's going on. I love that. Everything we do is just amazing. Like all the way down to the language of what we creating, like the words. Like it has to be saucy. You feel me? Culture.
I think we might be good because a couple of us that aren't are part of the North Star staff. So Louis Blaze, please take it away and thank you for offering.
Absolutely. Thank you all for your tremendous leadership, your efforts, your determination from just the inception of organizing this idea and bringing it into manifestation, right? And all of us being able to experience this reality together is just extremely transformational and empowering. So I'm extremely grateful. Today, a fire has been lit up in my spirit. I'm just so turned right now. And that's why I offered to close us out, because I just want to get this energy, you know, and share with everybody, especially on those last 2 points that were raised up from Dr. Jolly and also Lauren, right? Like how are we going to come together, right? How are we going to come together? And then when we do come together, how are we going to focus on the solutions, right? So that's what I'm taking away and bringing it to. So for this closeout, I want to share a verse with you all. I want to share one of my songs, but before I do that, I want to invite us all to collectively ground ourselves with some breather as well. So you can go ahead and get comfortable, you know, and rotate your neck or whatever. And I invite you to join me in breath. Breathe in freedom. Exhale fear. Breathe in joy. Exhale worry. Breathe in peace. Exhale pain. Breathe in love. Exhale hate. Ashe. I said free. Freedom is really knowing yourself. Free. Freedom is taking care of your health. Free. Freedom is generational wealth, breaking generational curses and making it out of hell. But in the hood, feel like we hypnotized. See me with my hoodie on and now I'm stigmatized. I really be the truth, they living in the lie. Swear it's fire in the youth, you see it in our eyes. Why? Cause I refuse to be a fool, consumed and used as a tool. Dropped out of school today, I found my purpose in the stew. The truth of the matter is self-expression is liberation. We need progression, more possessions and better payment. I've been breaking the pavement, freeing folks from the cages. By freeing myself, they watch it and find it as inspiration. Champ of the people, we need more of this representation. This here's for the next generation. From the moment we born, they snatch away our crown. Your family is scorned. They try to keep you down. Everything full circle when it comes back around. Is you gonna be another slave building up the town, or take back your crown, have everything reclaimed, then walk into your power, teach them to do the same. Yeah, they just want to see me in a box so a grave, but look at where we at and how far we done came. Look, land of the free, I just want to make money, but this land full of greed, they just want to take from me. America not a country, it's a corporation, built upon corpses and enforcing all this enslavement. Horrible races control the nation, I'm losing patience. My people facing systematic oppression and economic devastation, then mass incarceration, and multi-generations of trauma passed from mamas and grandmamas to fathers who was taken from out of our home, stripped of identity, got us looking like skeleton bones. Gotta learn how to own, we can no longer afford to rent. Feel it's us versus the world, so in these verses I'm a vent. The police destroying tents, they terrorizing the homeless. A thin line between law and morale in these moments. These people bogus, I ain't feeling like a civilian. Got us like hashtag save the children. From the moment we born, They snatch away our crown. Your family is scorned. They try to keep you down. Everything full circle when it comes back around. Is you gonna be another slave building up the town, or take back your crown? Have everything reclaimed, then walk into your power. Teach them to do the same. Yeah, they just want to put us in a box so a grave, but look at where we at and how far we done came. Yeah, we gonna be free. Free. That's my close out. Thank you. Thank you.
We're gonna be free.
Thank
you.
We already free, baby. Just gotta make
Thank
it real. Thank you. Thank you all. This is amazing, amazing session.
Everyone have a beautiful day.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you so
for
much.
sharing.
Thank
Yeah.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Have a wonderful holiday, everyone.
Oh yes, we'll see you one more time, December 15th, Black Study Session. We're talking about solidarity economies, and then but thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for this wonderful session, and we'll see you all very soon. So have a beautiful, beautiful day.
All right,
See
peace.
y'all.
Take good care.
Peace.